Get it started?
I believe so.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep.
Hey, everybody. Great. So yeah, this case study on the Illinois Monarch Project, the Illinois Monarch Project started in 2016. So this is 10 years later, kind of taking a look at like, how have we done? So the Illinois Department of Natural Resources that funded both the original action plan that we'll talk about in a few minutes, as well as this research study that we did really wanted to see like and this is unique as far as we know to all the states across the US. We think we're the only one that has actually gone through the process of estimating how many stems of milkweed have we've been able to put into the ground. So really smart and insightful, I think, of the IDNR to want to take that on. So I guess first to introduce myself, I'm Mark Johnston. I'm the senior landscape ecologist for and GIS manager for the Sustainable Landscapes at UIC. And you want to quickly just give your role and introduce?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Ann Jansen. I'm a conservation analyst, and I also supported this analysis.
Cool. Yeah, so quick agenda on the next slide here. We'll go through kind of the IMP background briefly, trip down memory lane, and then data and methods. We'll go kind of a little bit sector by sector to see what went into this report, and then rights of way and implications and key takeaways. And I think as you'll see, the CCAA program played an outside role in creating habitat on the ground. So I think this will be important for everybody to see. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so in 2020, again, the Illinois Monarch Project formed in 2016, but then in 2020 they came out with the action plan itself. And one of the big roles of that report was to figure out and pulling together lots of scientists and folks to talk about what can we do. They determined that we needed to put about 150 million additional milkweed stems into the ground. So that's Illinois doing their part to get to help rebound the monarch population. And then again, this study 10 years later is to say, okay, we're halfway to the goal of 150 million by 2038. Let's see how we're doing so far. And so Illinois Department of Natural Resources funded both of these projects. And anyway, we'll move on to the next slide. But yeah, they were really great to work with. Okay, so the context for some of this work is, and probably a lot of folks on the phone might recognize some of these original sort of all-stars from the monarch conservation work in this photo, but they formulated this group. Well, first, I guess the Rights of Way to Habitat actually started before in 2015 that all of you guys are familiar with. But then the MCP or Monarch Conservation Science Partnership, I think met in Fort to figure out what to do about the monarch population that was dropping so quickly. So on the next slide, they put together this paper that's kind of the famous paper now, the all hands on deck paper, where they really spelled out that this has to be across all sectors in order to really make a dent in helping to increase the population of the monarch butterflies. So this was kind of a pivotal paper by Wayne Thogmartin. If you look at the names on there, Iris Caldwell, who was like the head of our center, the director of our center back in the day, but also a lot of Ryan Drum. I mean, you see a lot of Karen Oberhauser, a lot of big names on this paper. Kind of everyone came together to figure out what could be done. And they determined in that paper that 1.3 billion stems needed to be added on the landscape. And it's kind of from this research study that we arrived roughly at that 150 million stems that Illinois needed to put in the ground. So on the next slide, you'll see part of the way that they arrived at doing that was creating this geospatial model and tool. You can still download this tool today. But this tool basically estimates how many stems of milkweed are on the ground based on different types of land cover. We'll get into some of that nitty-gritty in a minute, but they came up with this national model, kind of in the slide to the right there, or right side of the slide, to estimate, again, stems of milkweed. And so we wanted to replicate part of that model in our assessment of determining how Illinois is done. So on the next slide, what we did is, again, used something very similar to that tool that I had on the last slide to estimate the population of, or basically the number of stems of milkweed in the ground in 2014. So some of those data sets included the NLCD, that's the National Land Cover Data Set, the CDL, or the Cropland Data Layer, PADIS, that's Protected Areas of the U.S., and soil productivity. So that was like corn and soy soil productivity. And there was actually some additional layers to that. So that is all that was in the original model that USGS and Fish and Wildlife put together. So we replicated that using data for 2014 as well as 2024. And then we also pulled in a lot of additional data sets, most notably the CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program, and the CCAA programs. And then all the different urban programs that we could pull together to begin sort of swapping in higher resolution data to estimate how many stems we've been able to add. And then so taking those two models from 2014 and 2024, we just kind of essentially subtracted what the baseline was in 2014 from 2024 to estimate how many stems we've added in the last 10 years. So next slide. So big drum roll reveal. So this is, imagine a massive spreadsheet that we put together that came out of a couple of different geospatial models, and kind of all of that, distilling it down, resulted in these additional stems of milkweed from our estimates. So you can see that CRP, or Conservation Reserve Programs, where agriculture is set aside for conservation, resulted in about 56.5 million stems of milkweed. And then the second biggest one that's sort of lighting up the screen down there is the rights of way work that resulted in 46.6 million stems of milkweed. And one of the important things to note here is in the third column that's kind of grayed out, or the first column for that matter, it shows how many acres of habitat each of these comprise. So with only 1.6 million acres, rights of ways were resulting in really the second biggest amount of area. So 1.6 compared to that 22 million in ag. So it's a much more efficient use of creating habitat, if you will, and in those rights of way areas. So big shout out to both the transportation and utility organizations in Illinois that boosted those numbers. I think that's all I wanted to say on this slide. We'll move on to the next one. Oh, sorry. Can you go back one more? So the one other thing I wanted to say is that the CRP programs that really boosted up that 56.5, that is currently capped at 27 million acres of CRP land. And the new farm bill does not up that any higher. So was set back in 2016, I believe. And so now there's only 2.2 million acres left that can be sort of doled out for CRP land. What that means is that we're not anticipating another big spike in the next 10 years from CRP land, but we are seeing that rights of ways potentially could continue to grow quite a bit. So those federal programs that all of you are participating in with the CRP and the CBA are super important for helping to get more stems on the ground. And then I guess the other takeaway is that 108 million stems of milkweed is really great. We're close to that 150 million in only 10 years away, but we're seeing maybe with CRP, there might not be such a big increase in the next few years. So next slide. So I just wanted to say kind of what urban areas is comprised of. And again, this was like the lowest amount of increase, but we're going to go sector by sector. In this area, we did, just so you know, we took the NLCD, which is like 30-meter resolution, kind of coarse data, and we swapped out all those urban areas using a really high resolution data set, a 1 meter data set, to get based on actually a paper that I worked on at Field Museum a number of years ago. We could swap in higher resolution data and estimate those amounts of stems of milkweed that have been added. The big caveat here is we don't have additional looks in time in order to sort of really see what that increase has been over time in a really definitive way. And so that's, yeah, only one consolidated baseline that was in 2018. I think let's see. Yeah, I think I hit on all these points. The other important thing, I think, that even though urban areas did not maybe make the biggest dent, is that it's a huge effective, it's hugely effective in social momentum and buy-in and getting people to want to be part of the conservation movement on monarchs. And I'm going to kick it over to Anne for the next slide to talk about the other sectors.
Cool. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, getting into the agricultural sector. So this is our largest land use sector in Illinois with about 22 million acres. And it was also the largest contributor to additional milkweed stems in this time period, primarily driven by the Conservation Reserve Program under the USDA that Mark mentioned. And in particular, one conservation practice within that program, CP42, which is pollinator habitat. So outside of CRP, agriculture only provided modest milkweed gains. So just really underscoring the importance of CRP and CP42 specifically. CP42 expanded by over 100,000 acres in Illinois in this time period, but overall CRP acreage decreased by 126,000 acres. And we did calculate agricultural land generally and CRP land separately just because of the huge differences in estimated stem densities between CRP and non-CRP land. So just really underscoring like this huge increase coming from the agricultural sector is primarily been driven by this one conservation practice within this program, the CRP program. Next slide, please. So we also looked at natural lands, of course. On these lands, voluntary conservation is led by like conservation organizations, land trusts, public agencies, and volunteers through stewardship activities. And this sector had a relatively modest increase in acreage of 95,000 acres compared to almost 3 million acres overall, but we did see a pretty substantial increase in stems that our findings suggest was primarily driven by land managers having a significant impact on getting additional milkweed stems into the ground in this sector. So next slide, please. All right, rights of way in CCAA. So yeah, Mark hinted at this earlier, but CCAA partners have really been going above and beyond to drive these milkweed numbers up. So we did use CCAA partner data for partners who have adopted acres in Illinois. So we used the reported stem densities from monitoring plots to calculate out across partners adopted acres. So for utility partners, this accounted for 137,510 adopted acres. And then on the transportation side, we had IDOT with about 32,000 adopted acres, but anecdotally, we knew from them that they conduct conservation measures across over 338,000 of their acres system-wide. So we found that the habitat quality reported for their adopted acres could be reasonably assumed to represent conditions beyond that 32,000 acres, but we did go for a conservative estimate that was in between that 32,000 and 338,000 number. But even using a conservative estimate, we can see that rights of way were able to add over 46 million stems in this time period, which is obviously really incredible. Next slide, please. So yeah, 43% of all milkweed stems added in the state of Illinois in that 10-year time period were just on rights of way. And within rights of way, voluntary conservation was largely driven by participation in the CCAA specifically. So huge shout out to our CCAA partners in Illinois. We have six energy utilities, as well as IDOT, maintaining 169,000 acres, adopted acres under the CCAA in Illinois. As far as what we did not include separately, while we did include all rights of way land, we're also aware of specific conservation efforts being implemented by the tollway, solar facilities, rural electric cooperatives, other utilities, and pipelines who are not a part of the CCAA, but we were not able to account for this separately due to the lack of available data. Next slide. So on that note, big thank you to all of our CCA partners for doing this monitoring every year and reporting it through the annual reporting process. Because the milkweed data provided by CCA partners in Illinois was the most robust monitoring data we had from voluntary programs. It's obviously scientific, precise, and standardized through the scorecards and the geospatial database. So it made our job a lot easier in tracking progress over that time period, specifically on rights of way, compared to other programs like the Mayor's Monarch Pledge or Conservation at Home, where the reporting data kind of exists, but it's not nearly as robust as what you all are doing for the CCAA. Next slide, please. So we also did a series of interviews with relevant stakeholders, most of whom I think were involved in the original IMP development. And what we found over that 10-year period, some of the trends we found were a shift in focus from monarch conservation specifically to conservation of all pollinators. We also found that personal passion and the creation of social connections and kind of like one-on-one education and community level like knowledge sharing are really important to sustaining engagement and conservation long term. But we also noted that there is currently a lack of centralized coordination for conservation efforts statewide. Next slide, please. So some of the key takeaways we want to leave you with is just number one, like CCA partners are incredible. Rural areas were the smallest sector by acreage with 1.6 million stems, but the second largest contributor of milkweed stems in comparison to the largest contributor, which was agriculture, and they're working with 22 million acres versus 1.6. So really showing that rights of way have this outsized influence on monarch habitat and how much impact CCA partners specifically have had. Additionally, CCA data reporting is just so much more robust than other voluntary programs, and it really helped us closely track this progress over time and understand the impact of all of your efforts and the CCA overall. But yeah, as I mentioned, there's still this need for centralized leadership, sharing of progress, and progress tracking to build on existing enthusiasm and momentum. But yeah, overall, the CCAA has managed to create a comparable impact on pollinator habitat, even to longstanding federal programs such as the Conservation Reserve programs, even with far fewer acres available. And with that CRP acreage cap Mark mentioned, voluntary efforts like the CCAA and CBA are only getting increasingly important to pollinator conservation. Yeah, that is what I will end on. And yeah, thank you all so much for your time. And thank you to Allison for popping the full report in the chat for folks who are curious.
Thanks, Anna and Mark. We do have a few minutes here for any questions on the Illinois Monarch Project or their analysis. I do already see one question in the chat. So it sounds like there was a lot of CRP contracts that were not renewed after expiration and maybe a little hope of regaining them due to CRP limits in the Farm Bill. Do you guys have any insight into that?
I would say I'm not a CRP expert, but I think that's probably a fair summation of the situation. And yeah, the 2.2 million I think will be somewhat of a limitation on like future CRP land that gets doled out and across lots of states, obviously. Other questions or follow-ups to that? And
I
certainly if
know,
there, I was going to say, certainly if there are other experts on the call who know more about CRP land, feel free to hop in too.
yeah, on a slightly different note, I'll just say I
Yeah.
was definitely surprised at how much the Monarch CCA is contributing, because obviously this is just a larger effort with a lot of stakeholders and um, a lot of efforts beyond just our rights of way conservation program. So really cool to see that as well, how big of an impact this program is having.
Yeah.
Yeah, Von Seal says she's excited and can't wait to read the report.
Yeah. The link to the report I probably noticed is in the chat there. I
Yeah,
want
and
to dive
we'll
into the
also
details.
include it in our follow-up email as well.
Okay.
Any last questions for Mark or Anne, or even any questions on any of the other topics we covered today with our last 2 minutes here? Okay, well, thanks again, Mark and Anne. We'll have a recording of this on our website, and we'll send out the slides as we usually do, and with different takeaways from today. So appreciate you all for joining, and we're excited to see some of you in Utica, New York in a couple weeks. So thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.